The Wehrmacht placed great importance on marksmanship training for its soldiers, but at first, hardly any special operational tactics for snipers were developed. For a long time, they were simply regarded as part of the regular combat troops. It was similar in the Red Army. There were special rifle battalions, but hardly any clear ideas about how these specialists should best be used. Soviet soldiers had to learn this in the worst possible way, as targets for Finnish snipers in the Winter War of 1939 to 1940. The biggest tactical mistake that many snipers in the Second World War repeatedly made was surprisingly simple. They stayed in the same position for too long. After the first successful shots, many felt safe and wanted to land just one more hit, and thus gave the enemy exactly the time he needed to locate muzzle flashes, powder smoke, or the slightest movements in the terrain. In just a few minutes, a perfect hide could turn into a death trap. Snipers usually operate in two-man teams from rearward firing positions, integrated into their own unit. Only rarely are they deployed behind enemy lines, though they can also operate deep in the enemy rear. Designated marksmen with telescopic sights are likewise embedded in their subunits. In a two-man sniper team, made up of a shooter and an observer who supports the shooter, the two men generally alternate between the roles of shooter and observer. The use of snipers is intended to lower enemy morale, tie down or hinder enemy forces, and eliminate key equipment or key personnel. This includes, above all, enemy snipers, enemy leaders, gun and machine gun crews, radio operators, and also the crews of radar systems and electronic targeting equipment. Measures against snipers include changing position once their location has been detected, using periscopes and smoke, and deploying friendly snipers to duel directly with the enemy sniper. If the approximate location of a sniper is known, artillery, and especially mortars under the unit's control, can be used against him with high-explosive fragmentation shells. A preventive measure for commanders is to conceal visible signs of rank. Saluting and wearing conspicuous officers' uniforms are discontinued. The effective range of sniper rifles can, in exceptional cases, be up to 800 meters. It depends on the weapon, the ammunition used, and the weather conditions. Typical combat ranges are about 400 to 600 meters.
A military sniper's survival depends above all on his camouflage. Clever use of terrain while approaching, remaining motionless, evading, and behaving correctly in the field, as well as on having enough well-camouflaged alternate positions that can be reached under cover. A simple rule of thumb applies to camouflage. 80% of the material comes from nature, visual cover from branches, grass, soil, plus absolute stillness. 20% is artificial camouflage, ghillie suit, and camouflage cover. A sniper's kit includes specialized equipment, such as a spotting scope, wind meter, and barometer for the spotter, because wind strength, air temperature, and air density, altitude above ground, all affect the ballistic performance of the sniper's weapon. The art of the sniper is not only about hitting the target precisely, but also about mastering a variety of other skills and tricks. A sniper might be an excellent shot, yet fail to master camouflage and thus be detected quickly by the enemy. Snipers were trained to move silently over any surface, to pick up sounds at long distances, and to distinguish the steps of an animal from those of a human. Professional snipers were taught to move carefully through the forest so that not a single twig snapped under their feet. For this purpose, they were sent blindfolded into dense woodland, where they had to move as quietly as possible, avoiding every obstacle, crouching and crawling. Interestingly, sounds behave differently depending on how damp the forest is. When the ground is wet, snipers can move faster, as wet branches make almost no noise. It was not enough simply to move silently. In some cases, when it was impossible to go around an obstacle, a sniper would wait for a strong gust of wind or the noise of gunfire just to take a single step. Even their boots were treated in special ways. German snipers glued soft sheep's wool to the soles, which produced less noise. Not everyone can conceal their outline in the forest well. Snipers were taught to use every available means of camouflage: branches, stones, grass, leaves, and even trash. Depending on the terrain, an experienced sniper could become almost completely invisible. Ready-made camouflage suits were not mass-produced at the time, so snipers had to make their own camouflage. A professional sniper could lie for 24 hours in the same spot or sit on a tree branch waiting for a single target to appear. This practice was used especially in sniper duels, when Soviet snipers often lacked stamina and endurance and thus became easy targets for German shooters. Snipers have to be particularly resilient under stress, even-tempered, patient, and intelligent. These qualities are necessary because snipers are usually on their own in combat, carrying out highly monotonous tasks and operating independently in small groups or entirely alone. They must be able to make decisions by themselves, respond to new situations, and process large amounts of information.
The sniper's specific way of fighting, killing from ambush rather than in a clear-cut situation of self-defense, can cause severe psychological problems. During an observation that can last hours or even days, the shooter gets to know the target with all its human traits, laughing, eating, and other everyday activities, and starts to study that person's facial expressions closely. At the same time, the people being watched pose no personal threat and usually have no idea the sniper is there. This can lead to a kind of personalization, in which the target becomes a person the sniper feels he knows. The shooter must therefore be able to pull the trigger even after the target has been individualized, without suffering excessively from the fact that he has caused that person's death. Exactly here, in frontline conditions, the second part of the problem often arose. Hours of motionless observation ate away at the nerves. Many inexperienced snipers eventually could no longer stand the tension. They fired a whole series of shots just to break the silence or to feel that they had finally completed their mission. From the perspective of enemy reconnaissance, this was a gift. Every additional shot provided new clues that narrowed down the sniper's position. Not infrequently, psychological counseling is necessary after such missions because of this process of personalization.
When snipers had spare time, it was also recommended that they prepare 1 or 2 dummy positions in advance. The sniper was supposed to occupy his firing position before dawn, or at any other time when concealed access was possible. The setup and occupation of firing positions usually proceeded as follows. On the first day, the sniper studied the battlefield and the surrounding terrain, and at nightfall prepared and camouflaged his position. On the second day, he checked the quality of the equipment and camouflage of the firing point and occupied it at night, before sunrise. On the third day, he carried out his combat mission. Eyewitness accounts describe similar scenes again and again. At dawn, a sniper takes down 2 enemy runners in succession with clean headshots, but then remains in his hide to fire 1 more shot. Less than an hour later, a short but concentrated mortar barrage covers precisely that stretch of ground. His accuracy was not the problem. It was the 1 shot too many from the same position. Frontline reports from all years of the war show the same picture. After 3 or 4 shots from the same position, experienced opponents had usually narrowed down the sniper's location. Once mortars, artillery, or an enemy counter-sniper were brought to bear, that perfect cover turned into a deadly trap. The most important lesson of the survivors was therefore this: it is not the precision of the first hit that decides a sniper's fate, but his ability to remain invisible after every shot. Through prepared alternate positions, discipline, and the courage to abandon a hide in time.